What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. Up next are the Penn State Nittany Lions. Before we go preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough their schedule is, let's take a look at what Penn State did back in 2023. Here are my projections and predictions last year for Penn State. My projection for them was 9-3, and then my prediction for them was also 9-3 last year in 2023. But Penn State did a little bit better than that compared to my projections and predictions. This team went 10-2 last year in 2023. Again, this is based off of the regular season when we do these projections for each and every single one of these teams. But if you want to count their bowl loss for Penn State to Ole Miss in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, this team finished with an overall record of 10-3 last season in 2023 as well. So Penn State coming off a 10-win season once again. They did it, of course, in 2022, and then, of course, last year once again. So they're coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons. Here was the schedule last year for Penn State. It really didn't have any tough challenges in the non-conference. You look at their non-conference schedule. They, of course, had to play West Virginia out of the Big 12 and everything, but they ended up taking care of business in that game. And then the two losses that came for Penn State last year were, of course, to the top two teams in the Big 10 East last year, and that was to Ohio State on the road here, and then, of course, Michigan here at home as well. So they did end up losing to the Buckeyes and the Wolverines here, but still, it was enough for them to come up with a 10-win season. So that's a look back at 2023. Let's now look ahead to 2024. Here is the schedule for Penn State in 2024. Before we go game by game and preview each and every single individual game here on this schedule, let's take a look at who Penn State will play, of course, in the out of the non-conference. Of course, no divisions, of course, in the Big 10 this season. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play West Virginia on the road, and then they play Bowling Green and Kent State. So they got a couple of cupcake games here on the non-conference schedule, but you got West Virginia on the road here in the non-conference. Of course, this will be a rematch here from last season. So they will this time play West Virginia here on the road. Last year, Penn State took care of business against this team, but West Virginia ended up being a very big surprise last year. I do kind of expect a more competitive game from West Virginia and Penn State this year. So this game will be on the road at West Virginia, a very tough place to play, and it does make the non-conference schedule a little bit tough for Penn State, but that's the non-conference schedule. Let's now go back to the original schedule here for Penn State. So they will kick things off here with West Virginia on the road here on August 31st. And if you're a Penn State fan, that's a very tough game there to kick off the season of 2024, especially playing on the road at West Virginia. It's a very tough place to play. But Penn State beat them last year. We kind of expect a really competitive game this year. And West Virginia could potentially be a top 25 team. So that's not a really easy way to start out the season. And then they play Bowling Green after that on September the 7th. And then they get Kent State here at home on September 21st. They get a bye week before this game, a rather early bye week here in the month of September. So they play their three non-conference games here to kick off the season. And then they open up Big 10 play here against Illinois on September the 28th. Then they get to the month of October. They'll play UCLA here on October the 5th. Of course, one of those newcomers this year in the Big 10 Conference. And then they play USC after that, another newcomer here in the Big 10 this season, on the road on October the 12th. And then after that road game, they get a bye week here before playing Wisconsin on the road here on October 26th. So Penn State has to play back-to-back road games here with USC and Wisconsin. This is a very tough back-to-back. The good news about this back-to-back road game trip for Penn State is that they get a bye week in between these two back-to-back road games. You get a bye week after that USC game before playing Wisconsin on the road, so that's the good news there if you're a Penn State fan. But still, that's a very tough back-to-back road games here in the month of October. Then they get to the month of November. They'll have that big game at home against Ohio State here on November 2nd. Revenge game here for Penn State. Obviously, it seems like the Buckeyes have been owning Penn State now in the last few years. Will this finally be the year that Penn State can finally pull off the upset? It is a home game that does favor them pretty well, so I do expect a really close game here in this one on November the 2nd. And then they play another newcomer here in Washington at home here on November 9th. So Penn State does play 3 out of the 4 newcomers here on the schedule this year. And then you get Purdue here on the road here on November 16th, and then they play on the road at Minnesota here as well on November 23rd. So Penn State does have another back-to-back road game trip here, on the road at Purdue and on the road here at Minnesota here in the month of November. That's a little bit of a tough back-to-back, but not really compared to the USC and Wisconsin games. I think those are definitely tough back-to-back road games, and I think, that will be a little bit difficult for them and, in the month of October. But Purdue was a team that, took a big step back last year. You kind of expect them to kind of be that same team like they were last year. And then for Minnesota, that's a very tough place to play. I think that's a very likable, losable game for Penn State. You definitely don't want to sleep on that if you're a Penn State fan. And then Penn State will close things out here on November 30th against Maryland at home. So they do close things out with a home game here against Maryland on November the 30th. And that's the schedule for 2024 for Penn State. I think there's good news and bad news about this schedule. My thoughts on this schedule, I think it's a pretty tough one. Like I said, there are good news and bad news about this schedule for Penn State. The bad news is that they got a lot of road games, tough road games with West Virginia to kick off the season. You got back-to-back road games with USC and Wisconsin, and then back-to-back road games here at Purdue and Minnesota. So you got a lot of tough road games on this schedule. The good news about this schedule is that you don't have to play Oregon. You don't have to play Michigan. You have to play Ohio State, though, at least. That's a home game, though, for them. And I think that really sets up nicely for Penn State to have a really good year. But will they win some of those road games here on the schedule? But let's now get to the projection and find out what the projection comes out to be. And again, this is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough their schedule is. And this is the scale I've been using here for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, these are games where Penn State has no chance of competing in and has no chance of winning as well. 20% games in the orange, about a couple touchdowns of underdogs in the orange. 40% games in the yellow, these are games where Penn State will be about a touchdown of an underdog, about a heavy underdog as well. 50-50 games will stay in the white. That game set can go either way. 60% in the purple, the games where Penn State will be at least favored by a touchdown. 80% games are the games where Penn State will be favored by at least a couple of touchdowns. And then the 99% games here are the easy wins here for Penn State. And that's the percentage that I'm going to be starting here with Penn State here in this projection. And again, this is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So let's start with the easy wins here for Penn State. The game's at 99%. They will be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. And that's your 2 cupcake games, Bowling Green and Kent State here on September the 7th and September the 21st. I think these are the only easy wins here on this schedule for Penn State. That really sets up nicely for them in the non-conference. At least they don't have to play like another Power 5 team and everything like that. So I think Penn State will be favored by at least over 95% in both of these games against Bowling Green and Kent State. They should be able to go out there and take care of business in both of these games here in the month of September. So those are the easy wins here. You can count those as automatic wins if you're a Penn State fan. Let's go to the next percentage now, the games where Penn State will be favored by at least a couple of touchdowns. And I think you got 3 of them on this schedule. You got Illinois, UCLA, and Washington. They're all home games here for Penn State. Illinois, I know, gave Penn State a little bit of a scare in the first half last year, but I think Penn State is the more talented team here. I don't really expect Illinois to be, as of right now, pretty good. And when I do these projections, it's mostly based off of where the teams were from last season. And again, Illinois wasn't really a good team last year. They just missed out on a bowl game. So I do expect Penn State not to go out there and take care of business, but I do expect them to be the better team here, and also playing at home does favor them pretty well. If it was on the road at Illinois, I would definitely put it in the purple. UCLA, a newcomer, of course, in the Big Ten this year. I don't really know what to expect from this UCLA team, to be honest. I don't really know what the roster is going to look like for this team just yet either. And it's the same thing here with Washington. They're going to have a lot of roster turnover. They're going to lose Michael Penix at quarterback, some of those players that they had in the national championship last year, and plus they're going to lose their head coach, so I don't really know what to expect from Washington either. That's the reason why I'm favoring Penn State here by at least a couple of touchdowns. And again, if this game was on the road at Washington, I would definitely put it in the purple. And the same thing here with UCLA. If both of these games at Washington and UCLA were both on the road, I would definitely put all these 3 games in the purple. But these games right here, you can favor Penn State by at least a couple of touchdowns. Let's go to the next percentage now. The games where Penn State will be favored by at least a touchdown at 60%. I think you got 2 of them on this schedule. You got Purdue and Maryland. That's all the games that I have here for Penn State by at least a favorite of a touchdown. Purdue, with it being a road game, I'm going to put this game in the purple. I know Purdue wasn't really good last year. With it being a road game and everything, I have to put this game in the purple. Purdue, obviously, if this game was a home game here for Penn State, that definitely is a game that I probably would put in the blue. But with it being on the road and all, I'm going to put this one in the purple. Maryland was a pretty good team last year as well. They were a pretty average type team. I don't know what Maryland's going to look like now. They're going to lose their starting quarterback until Talia Tagovailoa. He did transfer away from this team, so I don't really think Maryland's going to be really that good of a team this year. As of right now, this is a team that probably will take a step back a little bit of a year this year in 2024. So I think you can favor Penn State in a couple of these games, at least by over a touchdown. I think that Maryland game is, close to being a blue game, but Penn State is at home in this game, and I do expect Maryland to still be a very competitive team. I think Penn State will be favored by at least a touchdown, and again, this is based off of where the teams were from last season. I think you look at the rest of the games here in the white, these are pretty much 50-50 games in my opinion. You got West Virginia on the road, USC on the road, Wisconsin on the road, Ohio State at home, and Minnesota here on the road in all the white. I think these are your 50-50 games. If you're a Penn State fan, I think these are all very winnable games here for the Nittany Lions, but these are very tough road games. That's the reason why I'm putting it here in the 50-50 category. West Virginia, I know, Penn State beat them badly last year, but I do expect West Virginia to be really good this year. Maybe even a top 25 team perhaps, but, West Virginia I think will be more competitive than they were last year. I was very close to putting this game in the purple, but with it being a road game and based off how West Virginia finished last year, I'm going to keep that game in the white. USC is kind of hard to tell, but playing on the road at USC is definitely a 50-50 game in my opinion. Wisconsin on the road is definitely a 50-50 game. I do expect a turnaround for Wisconsin this year. Ohio State, the big game here for Penn State on the schedule is definitely a 50-50 game. Both of these teams are pretty even, but, talent-wise, Ohio State does have the more talented team, and then Minnesota here on the road, a very tough place to play. That's the reason why I'm putting it as a 50-50 game, just like, it is with USC and everything. So those are the games where I think, are games that can go either way for Penn State. Let's now get to the projection here. Let's get a projected record here for this Penn State team. And again, this is not my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So you count the green and blue games as automatic wins, and then you split those purple games at 60%. You average them out at 60%, and then also you split out those 50-50 games and average those out at 50%. You get an overall projected record for this Penn State team at 8-4 for 2024. So that's what the projection comes out to be. And again, this is a very tough schedule for Penn State just because of those road games and everything. I don't really see Penn State going 8-4 to be honest, but that's just how the projection comes out to be when you look at this schedule. I think worst case scenario would definitely be 7-5. Best case scenario would be probably 9-3. It wouldn't really shock me if this team did win all their games, to be honest. They definitely have to win that Ohio State game in order to be like a really solid team and have a chance to make a run for a Big Ten championship and also make a run for the college football playoff as well. So that is my projection here for Penn State in 2024. Let me guys know what you think about this Penn State team. What do you think their projected record is as of right now for 2024? And also give me your worst case scenario and best case scenario for this Penn State team down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.